What's up, guys? Now that the iPhone 5 event is over, I want to talk to you about the keynote, some of the lies that I saw, a little bit more about the iPhone 5, and why I believe that Apple is losing its thunder. So let's get started. First thing I want to talk about is what Tim Cook said a while back ago. They said that they were doubling down on secrecy. And if you were looking at blogs and you were up to date with the latest news on mobile technology, a lot of the things that we saw today were no secret. This whole event was a little boring because all of the specs, all of the hardware, all of the pictures that we saw were true. I believe it was more of a conspiracy than anything, mainly to kind of keep the iPhone and Apple on top of news, because let's face it, Android, Windows, those are the hot things right now. Another thing at the start of the keynote that Tim Cook said was that the iPad has 68% market share compared to the others, which is 32%. And although that sounds great, one of the things that they didn't tell you was, and this is again Apple trying to misconstrue the truth, is when the iPad launched, and even a year or two later, I believe it was actually a year later, they still dominated by about 98% market share, which was huge. So realistically, that the iPad has 68% market share is not really that great. Mainly what it is that others are catching up. This is probably something that you won't see Apple talking about next year. This is exactly what they did in 2010. In 2010, they were bragging about how much market share they had over Android. If you guys have a chance, go on YouTube and search for that keynote that Steve Jobs was talking about, that how Apple's market share on the iPhone was much larger than any mobile phone. Why don't they talk about that now? Why don't they talk about how many activations Android has versus Apple's iPhone? This is something that Steve Jobs said before on how many activations there were per month, and now that's something that nobody talks about. Same thing happened when they talked about Line versus Windows 7. Again, guys, I just want to tell you how Apple misconstrues the truth. They only show you a piece, they don't show you the overall spectrum. You know, when last keynote, about a year ago, they started talking about Lion, how they had more, they showed a graph how they had more activations or more people adopting to Line versus Windows 7. Well, come on, guys. Did they tell you also that Line was $30 to upgrade versus Windows 7? You had to pay at least, depending on what version you're getting, but you're going to spend over $100. So these are things that they don't talk to you about. They just show you what they want you to believe. And that's a little bit, again, I don't want to sound like a fanboy, but that's really what bothers me. It's like, just show the facts, show what's out there. Another lie that I believe is a huge lie is they said the average customer downloads 100 apps. Come on, guys. Realistically, I have a 16 gigabyte iPad. I can barely get 40 downloaded apps because I run out of space. Most of my games are about 1 gigabyte, so think about that for a second. What about music? So I don't know if I believe Apple there. 100 apps is the average that the customer downloads. Being that the 16 gigabyte iPad is the most popular one, I highly believe that is the truth. That means that most people would have to be buying the 32 gigabyte to be able to even download 100 of them. Also, they said that the iPhone 5 was the thinnest smartphone in the world, measuring at 7.6 millimeters thick. The Razr actually measures at 7.1 millimeters thick. So once again, lies. That is not the thinnest smartphone, okay? And I believe there's even others that are thinner than the new iPhone, so I don't know what they're trying to do here. Now let's talk about the iPhone 5 now. What are some of the new features that are available, and how do they compare to what's out there? Number one is the larger screen. They bumped up to 4 inches, which I think is funny because about a year ago or several months ago, they were getting beef on how, the iPhone only has a 3.5-inch display and how others like Android are already at 4.5 and 4 inches. And one of the things that Apple and other commentators were saying is that the way you hold the device, it feels comfortable in your hands, and they were kind of letting people know that we're not going to go bigger because it's the right size. I think it's funny now that they upgraded to a 4-inch, and it's great. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I actually think that's a good thing. But you know, at the time when they were getting beef about it, they were trying to protect, no, this is the way it's supposed to be, but then they changed their mind when they realized that it's not. Anyhow, the resolution is kind of quirky, and I think that it's odd that they didn't do an actual HD display or 1280 by 720, which I believe is standard. I mean, most YouTube videos that would be a standard resolution, and they decided not to do that. The fact that they went with a 16 by 9 display is actually great, and that's one of the things that I did on my Android versus iOS series. If you guys haven't watched that, I put a link on that. I said, why do they have this weird 4:3 resolution? So again, 16 by 9, they did a good job there. However, applications that are not optimized for this new display you're going to be able to see black bars, which I think is weird. With Android, whenever you have these type of displays, it automatically just fills in the gap. Or even the iPad 2, when they moved up to the Retina display, you were able to zoom in 100%. In this case, you will have black bars. So that really depends on developers adopting to this new resolution and what they're going to do about that. Another thing that they came out with was the Lightning connector, which I think is, again, they want to be different. Guys, they should have just done a micro USB. That's a standard format that everybody uses. Instead, they want to be different. They want to be cool. They call it Lightning, which I think is interesting because they have the Thunderbolt display. So thunder and lightning. I don't know if that's part of their whole marketing scheme. I don't know. But anyhow, that's one of the things that is new with the iPhone 5. They still kept the hardware button, the physical button, which I think is odd. Now that we're moving to, you know, newer technology, and I've used the Galaxy Nexus, I don't think I could ever use a hardware button. Soft keys is the way to go. Plus, you can do a lot more things with development. You can remove that when you're watching, for example, Netflix video or YouTube. All of the keys or the soft keys will disappear. Not only that, that physical button that Apple uses, it takes up a lot of real estate on the device. If they actually got rid of it, you could incorporate a much larger screen or resolution. So what else was great about the iPhone 5? Really, guys, they were playing catch up. 4G LTE. I mean, these are things, a lot of things that they came out with today are things that Windows phones already have. Android has had for many years already. So guys, again, I don't want to sound like a fanboy. I just want Apple to innovate. Innovation is the key, and that is the only way that we can have, for the consumer, better software and better hardware. The fact that all of this was leaked out and the fact that we already knew this was something that was very disappointing. And hopefully in the future, Apple can do better. And this is why I believe that they're losing their thunder. No pun intended. Thunder, lightning. Anyway. Yeah, I'm not too sure that they're going to really compete now with what's out there. Will people buy it? Of course people will buy it. There's always the hardcore people that will stick to Apple, and that's great, you know. But is it something that is revolutionary? I know a lot of people that have made the switch from Apple to Android and will never look back. And the fact that these were just incremental upgrades and nothing so spectacular, I don't believe that they will be swayed to go over to Apple. Anyhow, guys, I hope you guys liked this video. I just wanted to kind of give you my insight, what I felt about the whole keynote and the whole event as a whole. Guys, if you guys like what you see, make sure to subscribe to my channel. I am also on Twitter, Google+. Share this with all your friends. Let them know the truth that's out there. And if they haven't seen my videos, make sure you let them know about my Android versus iOS series. I know that some of the things I said back a few months ago may not apply today because Apple has started to catch up, but that's great. Anyhow, guys, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in my next video. Thank you so much.